All right, boys and girls, we are back with another edition of The Big Ben Show. I'm your host, Ben Domenech. You can follow me on X at bdomenech. Follow the show at Big Ben Show Fox. You can write us at bigben@fox.com. I hope that you will rate, review, subscribe, share this with your friends, and comment about the things that you hear on the show. And we thank you for tuning into it every week. We've had some great feedback thus far, and I want to continue with that. Today, I wanted to talk about something a little bit different. I know that the conversation in Washington is dominated by talk of a shutdown and furloughs, and people are scared of Rust vote, and people are worried about what's going on, and Democrats are scattered all over the place, and Chuck Schumer doesn't know what he's doing, and Hakeem Jeffries doesn't know what he's doing. Everything's up in the air. But I wanted to talk to you about something different, based on a couple of things that just happened in the last week in my life, but also based on something that I heard from America's conscience, Hillary Clinton.
So I think that's what makes us so special as a country. And the idea that you could turn the clock back and try to recreate a world that never was, dominated by, let's say it, white men of a certain persuasion, a certain religion, a certain point of view, a certain ideology, is just doing such damage to what we should be aiming for. And we were on the path toward that. I mean, imperfectly, lots of, bumps along the way, but I agree with you, we were on the right trajectory.
She really just can't let that deplorable stuff go, even after all these years. And it's easy to forget, of course, that the originator of all that talk back in the day was someone in Barack Obama talking about, of all things, Democratic primary voters in Pennsylvania when he talked about people clinging to their guns and religion. I think that there's actually something really interesting going on when it comes to the state of men and religion. Forget the white men part of it, because that's irrelevant, especially considering that you had so many people of a variety of ethnic persuasions and backgrounds come over to the side of Republicans in the most recent election. I think that they have a big problem with Latino men, too, in particular. But something that I think is happening in this country more generally and culturally is I think that there's a reassertion of an admiration for, an appreciation for strong manhood and principles that come with that people have been missing. Something that I think is actually part of the reaction to the death of Charlie Kirk as well. I know that we talked about it a little bit, but it's something that I've seen play out in recent years in a lot of different ways, and not just in the delays in marriage among the professional class, women who, quite frankly, are finding it difficult at a certain point to find a man who has the kind of values that they would like in a partner and a spouse. And of course, we've seen it in consistent poll data that shows us that, of all people, conservative men are actually the people who are most aspirational for having a family, that's their top priority is having kids. That's something that I think goes against a lot of the assumptions that people have built in about the way that modern American men actually live their lives. The idea that they are living in kind of permanent frat house communities where they just sit at home and play video games, et cetera, lose themselves into a fantasy of a permanent college life or something along those lines and never want to grow up. I think that there's something that has been forming for some years now as a backlash to that, a return to values of faith, stoicism, and the like. And I think you see that reflected a lot in the conversations, at least that I hear, among the women who are at this professional class and are seeking those types of things in someone who could be their spouse and who could be potentially the father of their children. I was at my daughter's birthday this past weekend, and that's the kind of thing, a 5-year-old birthday party where it tends to be dominated by the moms, and they talk about things with their friends, about their friends' struggles and relationships and things like that. And I was overhearing some conversations around those things about the difficulty of finding men who really wanted to take on the traditional fatherly role in life, the traditional role of a spouse. And that's something that actually these women thought of as being, particularly aspirational, something that they wanted to find. And I was thinking about that in the context of so much of what's gone on in recent years, which has been about diminishing men and basically saying your time is past, the future is female and all of these other things. And there was something that was lost along the way there that I think the American left in particular really didn't want to appreciate. They still don't like it. And you see it and hear it in Hillary Clinton's comments and the comments of others that basically say to American men, your time is past. There is no real future for you. And they can reiterate that as much as they want, but it doesn't make it true. There's all these different trends online, obviously, that are indications of some of the differences between men and women that tend to go viral. There was, of course, the one recently, about a year ago, about how much time men spend thinking about the Roman Empire. When my wife asked me about that, I said, honey, you've sat at my desk, you've done podcasts at my desk. There's only one book on my desk, and it's Marcus Aurelius. So yes, they think about the Roman Empire. All men do. But I do think that there's something there that indicates a gap that has been furthered by the differences in the way that men and women expect to communicate in this day and age. Something that's been ruined particularly, I think, by relationships that are primarily conducted over text and not in person. And frankly, I think a lot of men who have been uncomfortable with the way that they're expected to talk about their internal monologue, about the things that they're feeling, about what's actually going on. You've, I'm sure, seen the very popular meme of a woman and a man laying in bed next to each other, and the woman is thinking, I bet he's thinking about other girls, and the man is typically thinking about, Hannibal crossing the Alps or something along those lines. The thing that I think is actually going on there is that we have a failure to communicate. And I think that communication failure is in part due to the fact that men are naturally given to more stoicism and that they have a lot more going on underneath, I think, than women understand. Necessarily in this day and age when everyone is a chronic oversharer, the fact that men hold things back is not an indication of weakness. It's actually something that I think is valuable within a relationship. It's actually something that helps within a role, and it focuses you, I think, in ways that allow you to think about the future. One of the lines from Aurelius that I've always appreciated is, you find rest from vain fancies when you perform every act of life as if it is your last. And so I think you always have to have that type of concept as being the motivating factor for how you look at the world. One of the things about having kids get older is that you have the conversation about whether you're going to get a pet or not. And we never got one before the kids arrived. And so now it's at the point where my oldest daughter is 5. The younger one is 2. And then we have a son on the way around Christmas time. And the conversation is about, should we get a pet? Should we get a cat? Should we get a dog? I'm a dog person personally. I love cats. They're fine. But, I like dogs. And the conversation that I had with my wife about this recently, about whether she would get one, she sort of said, the kids really want one. The kids, really want to have this kind of experience in their life. We should get one. I grew up around dogs. You grew up around dogs. We should do it. And the internal process when you have that conversation can happen in an instant in terms of what you're actually thinking about. You think about the cost of getting a pet. You think about the fact that it's going to cost more than, buying a Mercedes over the life of the dog. You think about the fact that you're going to be tasked with taking care of it. You're going to have a new friend that you get up with every morning, rain or shine, that you take outside and have that kind of interaction and relationship at all hours of the night and in the dark, because that's not something that the kids are going to do. You think about the fact that when you were growing up, that was something that your father did, or that your parent did, that they had to take care of the cats and the dogs and take care of all of them in terms of their medical challenges and the like, that they're going to experience illness, that there's going to be challenges with it. But then you also think about the good things that you gain from it. You think about the relationship that you had with family pets, how close they were with you, how they comforted you after a bad event in your life, or even if you were older and you could come home from a failed interview or a deal gone wrong, and you could still have a joyful evening with an animal who just views you with loving eyes. And that's something that is also valuable and important for your kids to learn. And then you think, of course, about the fact that, at least if you're anything like me, you always have to be, as the father, the responsible one when it comes to the end of that pet's life, and that inevitably, 10 to 15 years down the road, there's going to be a point where you're going to have to wrap that pet in a blanket and take it for its last ride, whether it knows it or not. And that's something you're going to have to talk about with your kids. And that's something that you're going to experience as a moment of sadness, that you're signing up for that. And you think all those things in the 10 seconds that it takes between your wife saying, yeah, I think we should get a dog, and sure. That is, I think, something that's important to have in a household. It's important to have in a partner. It's important to have as a man. You're listening to The Big Ben Show. I'm Ben Domenech. We'll be back with more right after this. Happy to welcome to The Big Ben Show Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today. I want to talk to you about a couple of different things related to the government shutdown and everything that's going on in Washington. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask the question that is on the vast majority of our listeners' minds, which is, when are you going to go on a date with Jarvis?
Does he even exist? I love Jarvis. And in fact, that's my ASMR, like late at night when I finally come home from the campaign trail, I'll go on and I'll see, what is Jarvis best doing? Go on there and give him, I'll raise hell and give him a hard time. And it's hilarious. And then there are other people now starting to chime in. He's got almost 100,000 followers. So y'all need to go on. If you're not following Jarvis Best, you need to go on there and follow him, because it's hysterical, the stuff that he posts. It's hilarious. It gives me a good laugh.
Yeah, well, it gives me one too. I'm standing the Jarvis
cheering us on.
Jarvis Nancy online relationship. This shutdown seems to me to be pretty ridiculous. I have heard the explanation from Democrats, and I want to give you, this is the summary that they've come up with. Here's Hakeem Jeffries.
Our top priority is to make sure that we cancel the cuts, lower the costs, and save health care for the American people. That's 8 words. Not difficult for Donald Trump to process. Cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save health care.
How many PR consultants do you think they met with in order to come up with that series of an explanation?
It sounds like he's trying to wrap it out too.
Yeah.
So I just, what they're doing here, essentially, they want 1.5 trillion in extra spending to keep the government open for the next 4 weeks. That is crazy. They want free healthcare subsidized by U.S. taxpayers for illegal aliens. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. They would rather shut down the government, not pay our troops to put illegal immigrants, undocumented workers, illegal aliens first ahead of American citizens. It's so outrageous, the idea here. Our troops got paid this morning. They will not get paid on October 15th if this shutdown continues. We have kids who are on food stamps who will not be able to get food or get fed. We have air traffic controllers that may not be able to show up to work because they're not getting paid today. They'll get back pay, but some people can't afford to do that. And so what they have done here, basically, I see this as Chuck Schumer's shutdown. He's terrified of AOC. Mm-hmm. He's terrified of being primaried by her for the U.S. Senate, which it sounds like it's going to happen. So he is placating to the far fringes of the left corner of his party, because the vast majority of Democrats do not want a shutdown. 76% of Democrats said no to a shutdown. He did it anyway because he's afraid of some former bartender from the Bronx. And that's what this is about. And you think about it, and you think about how idiotic it is, because he's terrified of her. Just retire and get it over with. They've been hypocrites. The Democrats have voted for 13 clean CRs over the years. They can stomach this one to get it done for the American people.
You said that he's catering to the radical left on this, and I don't, of course, disagree with you on that. But do you think that that is actually now the strongest force within their coalition? You have tangled with some of the members on Capitol Hill, and gone viral for some of those tangling with a number of younger members who are from that DSA wing. And obviously, I'm talking to you today from New York City. Zohran Mamdani is kind of the major storyline. The cover of Vanity Fair, Legend of Zohran right now, and it really does seem to me like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, they don't actually run anything anymore, and that it's just that left flank which is driving the agenda.
Right. And I was going to bring up Zohran Mamdani. I mean, it'd be that socialist, communist wing, far left wing of the party. It's really not far left anymore. It is
Yeah.
mainstream. And I said this last night, but we look at our party, we have a leader. We have Donald Trump, and right behind him is JD Vance. We have strong leadership within our party, and we have coalesced, we have unified behind this strong, bold leadership. On the other side of the aisle, they are leaderless. They don't have anyone. Joe Biden doesn't know where he is right now. And then you have Kamala Harris, who's rewriting history. No one can believe her. And then you have Gavin Newsom, who's out there inciting violence against conservatives right now. And so you look at the bench over in the Democrat Party, they're totally off the rails. They have
Mhm.
lost the plot, and they don't have a leader. They are not grounded in their faith. They hate the faith.
Mhm.
They're not grounded in any moral compass. They're just grounded in what French thing can I do? What violence can I incite to then get more clicks, more fundraising, more votes? How extreme can I become to become more popular? It's
Mhm.
just all in that. And you've got House Democrats up there in DC today, pretending they're there to work with Republicans on getting the government back open. Well, guess what? House Democrats, you had all last week. We've had months now to work with us on a bill. We gave you a clean CR. You voted it. You voted against it, and that's not on us. That's on the conscience of the Democrats who voted against it. And I think there's a test vote today or tomorrow that'll see if more Democrats in the Senate will come over. But this is going to be devastating. And I would encourage Democrats to listen to Senator Fetterman.
Mhm.
I mean, he's the only one I can think of that is talking any kind of common sense in the Democrat Party. And maybe he'll emerge as their leader, but right now they're leaderless.
Yeah. In terms of your behind the scenes relationships or lack thereof with some of these people who are on the other side, how much of the way that they approach their job is an act versus being legitimate? We've all seen the videos of Jasmine Crockett in certain contexts and in other contexts, I think, at this point. Is there anything behind the scenes where it's like, we know this game that we're playing for the cameras and then we're different off air? Or is it something where that's just constant? It really is who they are.
Well, I mean, I would say most of it is an act.
Mhm.
90% of it is an act. Someone like Ro Khanna doesn't do that nearly
Yeah.
like other people do. Jasmine Crockett and AOC, Presley,
Mhm.
Omar, etc. I mean, it is, and you're seeing the theatrics. Like some of the Democrat Party deserve an Oscar for the performative political acts that they are doing this week, wringing their hands, clutching their pearls, right, over the government shutdown, when really they're part of the problem. They are the problem. And they become such a caricature. We on the right, we don't get away with that because people in our own party will call us out for it, right? But on the left, they're encouraged. The mainstream media will talk about it. They'll amplify it. They'll go on the news about it. I mean, to see someone like Jasmine Crockett be given the microphone. I mean, she has one accent when she's on the Breakfast Club, and then she's got another when she's in front of her donors, and another when she's on an oversight in a high-profile hearing. And the intonation, the differences in the intonation they're wild. And I can't even, it's one of them, it's a phenomenon, I guess, but she's certainly a great actress. I think most of it is for them.
Mhm.
They're not really, I don't take a lot of them serious.
Mhm.
There are a handful that I have worked with over the years, but if you say you're for women and kids, then be for women and kids. Stop with the theatrics. Get on a Republican bill. But they're not. It's all performative for them. It's all for the next election. I don't get the sense the vast majority of them even care.
Speaking of theatrics, were you surprised that Don Lemon seemed surprised that being called the B word was not something that was going to scare you? What was that whole
No, I mean,
like? I couldn't believe that.
yeah, he like I would be intimidated by it, but I'm like, but Don Lemon, call so much worse
Worse
than that.
every
I'm
day.
called the C word on a daily basis. People have said they want to smash my head in with blood and guts all over the floor. Like, that's what people want to do to me. So to call me the B word, I'm like, that sounds like a compliment.
There
I'll
is,
take it as a win.
yes, there is, I think, though, something that is troubling about all this, which is that we saw the reaction, obviously, to the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. You're speaking at a TPUSA event tonight, I think, and we've seen the open celebration that happened in not just corners of the internet, but it seemed like it was everywhere. I mean, I don't know how you reacted to that, but when I saw that, it actually did. It was something that, for the first time in a while, jarred me in a way that I found troubling, because it just seemed so almost baying for blood that, like, that, wait a minute, this goes beyond sort of calling people Nazis and fascists. It's like, oh, wait, you are supporting the fact that you think that this person's death is a good thing and you would like to see more of it. And then the pile-on that came after for his wife, in that, and her, mourning and her speech about him and everything like that, which I found so moving. And then other people have just been trashing her and everything like that. Does that surprise you? Or just because you are in such a spotlight, is it something that doesn't surprise you because you've seen it kind of curdling up, bubbling up in America over the past several years?
I'm sort of numb to it. I've been dealing with the left for a long time, particularly since I came out against the transgender stuff
Mm-hmm.
when Tim McBride got elected. I mean, I was assaulted at the US Capitol by a pro-transgender person. I had a transgender person, a man in a skirt or a dress, at a Turning Point USA event at University of South Carolina earlier this year, try to pick up a potted plant, a fern, and throw it at me. I am on the receiving end of many, many, many death threats every single day. I carry my 6-hour 3P65 now. I have armed guards now wherever I go. I will sometimes try to go incognito, put on a wig just to go to the grocery store, be out with my kids, because my kids have suffered. They get death threats. My parents get death threats. So, but to see it, I've been seeing it on the back end, and no one believes you. And like, no one believes you. No one believed me when this was happening. But now that it's on the front end and people are publicly, these are nurses, doctors, teachers, principals, professors. These are people that are around children, and they
Mm-hmm.
have an influence. They're making life or death medical decisions
You
for
trust
people.
them.
Right, you
Yeah.
trust them. And then to see them so obtusely, so over the surface, so in your face, for my employees and people close to me that haven't seen it, they're like, man, that's my friend, that's my neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I just had lunch with this person 2 days ago, and they're celebrating Charlie Kirk's political assassination and murder. It really, I think, is a shock to the system for people that have heard about it, but not actually seen it. And
Mm-hmm.
we've not all been able to see it right there in our faces, and it's disgusting and it's evil. And I see this not as so much as right versus left, even. This is a fight between good and evil. And I think that's why people are racing to the Christian faith or Jewish faith. They're
Mm-hmm.
racing to the synagogue, they're racing to church because they don't like what they see and it scares them. And they know that this fight is bigger than themselves, and that we have to come together in our faith and rely on our faith. And I hope and I believe this is a massive Christian revival, that we're all Christian nationalists now. I don't think that's an ugly word. I think that is, I believe in my faith. I have it tattooed on my finger right here. And, y- you know, even I've got friends and family that are praying now. I've got
Mm-hmm.
a kid that has never said they've ever prayed in their life saying, I'm praying
Mm-hmm.
tonight. And to see that kind of influence that Charlie Kirk had on this generation, I have so much hope for the future, because this generation has stood up to it. But it is jarring, it's shocking, and people that I've been trying to get people fired.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a professor, and you're around people and they trust you, you don't deserve to be in a position of trust if you're celebrating another man's murder over politics.
Yeah. I think that you focus there, I think, on the most important aspect of coming out of this. Something that I don't think the left and certainly the media establishment appreciated about Charlie Kirk was, I think that they saw him as just like a political activist, just like a Republican, goes on campuses and stuff like that. The faith element of this was always the more important part. It was way beyond just like, this is young Republicanism on steroids. No, no, no. the faith element to me is so critical because it's coming at a moment in which we have the most unchurched generation in, the history of polling, but we also see this resurgence of people having more curiosity, wanting to get back to it. Do you think that that's something that you're hopeful about, that it can be sustained? Because, sometimes you see these things happen and then they fade away. And if it is going to be sustained, what do you think needs to happen in our communities in order to make sure that that happens?
I do think Charlie Kirk's assassination is different. I think this is a moment in time that this is a line that was crossed that we're never going back. I mean, this was something that was so egregious. He was a young, handsome, smart, eloquent 31-year-old father who professed his faith in Jesus Christ every single day of his life, encouraged people to go to church, get married, have kids. And to see now, even in the 3 weeks since his assassination, over 120,000 students around the world have written to and requested a Turning Point USA chapter in their high school or college. And I believe that Turning Point needs as many resources as possible. I'm going to Clemson University tonight, doing a Turning Point USA event. I will show up to as many as they want us to, but we need to support the movement. I'm someone who, for years now, I take people to church with me. It is now easier to invite people to church more than ever. I've got so many people that want to come to church with our family. We're gonna have to reserve more rows. Like, it's really been incredible. I have people reaching out because they know I'm back in the church for about 6 years now, and they know that I go. Like, where do you go? When do you go? Can we go with you? And people have asked to be prayed over, and we're seeing this more public than ever. And it's really incumbent upon us who have a public profile to carry that torch and ensure that we're carrying Charlie's message all the time, that we don't stop, so that we can sustain it. And we need to support the church. We need to support different groups that are doing so well in the community. We need to support Turning Point USA. We need to support Erica with everything we have.
I know that you are running for governor, and you have different, an agenda that you're going to push, in that role. You've seen how much, kind of the way our politics has changed over the last decade. You've been paying attention to it for long enough to see how much things have shifted, and they've shifted a lot. What do you think can be achieved realistically if you ascend to the governorship in South Carolina? What are some of the top priorities that you would have? And how would you approach that as a very different job from the one that you've had in Congress to this point?
Well, I very much look forward to being an executive and running a state. And all of the policies I'm putting out for governor, I've written myself. I have the experience. I come from the legislative body. I have experience in Congress, and I know what it's going to take to get the job done, not talk about it, but actually do it and deliver results. And so cost of living and inflation are paramount to folks in South Carolina. We are growing. We're the 10th fastest growing state in the country. And that means prices are through the roof, particularly if you're trying to buy a home. Real estate prices are way up there because you have people from New York and California that think our real estate is cheap, and maybe it is in some cases, but for those who are making $45K a year here in South Carolina, some now can't afford homes they previously otherwise could have. So I will follow Trump's lead in cutting taxes. I have a plan to cut taxes from 6.2% down to 0 in South Carolina in 3 to 5 years. Illegal immigration is a big one. We have Tren de Agua. We have MS-13. We have Sinaloa cartel. We have all the cartels here. We have certain neighborhoods you can't go into because the cartels run them. We've had sanctuary sheriffs in South Carolina. And last year we had one, and I was the only federal official or even statewide official that said anything, and I got her fired. She lost her election by 1 point because myself and 2 or 3 local elected officials got out there on the horn and told voters what was going on. And in a county, my biggest county, Kamala Harris won Charleston County by 11 points. And the Democrat sheriff who was letting out illegals who were rapists, murderers, and pedophiles lost her race by 1 point. We did that. Democrats and Republicans alike came together and said, we're not doing this. So law and order is very important. I have a strong record on crime and law and order, illegal immigration, taxes, cost of living, all those things. And one of the things that I'm going to do that'll be different is that I'm going to actually roll out, here are the bills. I will write them for you. I'm going to show you the pathway. Here are the 8 to 10 things we can do in the first year. Here's how we're going to do it. And I'll be rolling that out in the first of the year. And I'm very excited about it. I'm very passionate,
Mhm.
as folks will know. And I'm very much looking forward to being the real deal, being a conservative executive governor, making South Carolina bigger, better than ever before.
In the state that I live in, Virginia, one of the biggest issues that factored into the governor's race in the last time around, and it's continued to the current contest, has been the violation, really, the invasion of women's locker rooms by men. And it's something that has become a real flashpoint and hot button issue. I, for one, foolishly thought that in the wake of the last election, there would be a moment of reconsideration, that Democrats would sort of look at the situation and say, wow, we really got far out in the extreme position on this, that they would pull it back to some degree. It doesn't seem like they have. Why haven't they?
No, they have not actually, and they've doubled down on it, which will continue to isolate them. Like the bigger the microphone you give Democrats, the more races Republicans are going to win. So I'm like, give them as many media interviews as possible, because there's no way any normal person is going to be on board with this.
Mhm.
And the idea that you would have a fully endowed man in a girl's locker room next to a 12-year-old in a shower is so ridiculous, so crazy, so wild. That is where the mainstream Democrat Party is, which is why in the November election, you saw Donald Trump win more women than
Mhm.
any Republican previously. Kamala lost women. I think compared to Biden, she was 5 points down with women, because they didn't vote on abortion. They voted on the men and women's sports, men and women's locker rooms. They voted on transgender issues. Suburban women are not with the Democrat Party on this. They want to protect their daughters, and they'll vote for Trump to do it. And so what we saw that, and we saw Trump with his advertising and what he's done now as president, what Trump has done to make good on all of his promises. You have Kamala Harris rewriting history in her book about 107 days, saying, she wants to protect women's sports. It was literally Biden and Harris that were dismantling Title IX before our eyes and
Mhm.
taking away achievements for women and girls, for our daughters, and scholarships in sports. They were doing that. They were literally dismantling it before our eyes. And now they want to rewrite history, some of them, but most of them haven't gotten the memo. And so it's going to be very interesting. Post Charlie Kirk's assassination, the government shut down, putting illegal aliens first and putting men over our daughters is going to be a massively losing formula. And I don't think they understand what is about to happen in the midterms.
Mhm. Yeah, let's close out on that. This midterm, obviously, historically, is one where you would expect there to be a backlash to, a second-term president, that kind of thing, where you would see Democrats, take the House and have, a foothold in Washington. How likely do you think that that really is at this point? And what are the key factors in terms of, letting Republicans essentially buck history with this? And how much of it depends on things that, frankly, aren't going to be necessarily the quick fix kind of thing when it comes to the economy or the price of goods and the like?
Well, that's right. And I think what's going to happen next year in the midterms, but the problem is with Republicans, we need bold leadership. We need to be strong and show that our conservative policies, our conservative ideas, ideologies are going to make our districts, our country, our states better, and they will. And we've got to be behind Trump 1,000% on this. And I believe with the way that Democrats are headed, with the crazy positions that they are taking, the ads that we can run next year are going to be devastating. And what I believe the biggest challenge for the Democrat Party in the midterms next year is going to be motivation.
Hmm.
What, the enthusiasm factor is going to be a factor. And Trump is doing so well as president. The enthusiasm, the wind is at our sails. The wind is at our back. And if we continue this trajectory, staying united, staying strong on America First policies, I mean, we are going to crush it next year. And you're even seeing in the Virginia governor's race
Yeah.
that the leading Democrat candidate is more vulnerable than what the polls are really showing. You're seeing some of that subcutaneously, and you're seeing Republicans that are starting to peak at the right time leading up to some of these races. But it's going to cost a lot of money. But we're outraising Democrats. We are outperforming them. We're doing better than ever because of how united we are, how normal. Like, we are the party of normal. And all you got to do is play some of Hillary and Bill Clinton or Chuck Schumer from 10 or 20 years ago, or Nancy Pelosi. They were MAGA. Like, the early 2000s, the Democrat Party was like ultra MAGA.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're just so far off the rails. They're trying to buy votes by giving illegal aliens, freebies with the federal government. Like, they are just, and the average hardworking American that can't keep up with inflation, that has 2 jobs, they're going to vote. They're going to vote with Republicans, and it's going to be overwhelming. And I cannot wait. I'm here for it.
I will thank you for taking the time to join the Big Ben Show. I will look forward to the next time that I can conduct this interview, ideally across from you in a Waffle House again.
I would love to do that. That'd be great. Again.
Remind me of your order.
It is smothered, diced, capped, and peppered. Changed it up since the last time I was there.
Yeah, mix it up. Thanks so much, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, and good luck tonight talking to Turning Point. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Happy to be joined on the Big Ben Show by the great Brian Kilmeade. Thank you so much for sitting down.
Ben, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it's great to be up in New York and see you in person. I want to talk to you about a number of different things, but first off, let's talk about that whole situation that played out at Quantico with the Pete Hegseth speech, the kind of insane media reaction to that speech, and everything that kind of came out of it in terms of the shift and the adjustments that they want to see happen in terms of military policies. What did you think? What was your takeaway?
Well, I talked to 2 people, Lieutenant Colonel, who I'm biased, but he's the perfect person to become a general. Mm-hmm. And he had to get out. When you don't get your promotion, you got to get out, right? Mm-hmm. So he didn't get picked for those officers during the Biden years, so he had to leave. Served like 9 tours between Afghanistan and Iraq. So he left. He listened to that speech, and he said, if I was active, I would have gotten my promotion because I would have been able to have the volition to take initiative and be backed by the Pentagon, number one. And one of his big sins was he's a white guy. Mm-hmm. And they basically told him that. The problem is you don't have any problem with you're more traditional sexuality and you happen to be born white, which we all have to live with every day. And the other one was a 3-star general that deserves a 4th, and my just personal opinion, and he loved it. Mm-hmm. He said, if they want aggressive generals, I'm an aggressive general. If they're going to watch my back, I'm going to let them know the plans. Mm-hmm. He's been written up before. He says, this is exactly what I need. His big worry is that Pete needs to get the right information about the who's who among his generals. You saw how big that crowd is.
Yes.
It's impossible to know all those people.
Well, it was I think it was kind of an eye-opening event for a number of people who don't necessarily know how many people you're actually talking about in this. Just to see them all there and to say,
do we need them all?
Do we need them all?
A lot of generals.
I mean, there's a lot of questions that are associated with that, and whether it is kind of the inflation process that has happened.
But I like the tone.
Yeah.
I like the tone. And it was, look, we have to win a war, and war's ugly. Can we stop pretending like it's not? Mm-hmm. And we can't fight it and pretending that men and women are the same. I mean, I have this woman, I'm giving you way too much information from Stretch Lab.
That's okay.
So I go into Stretch Lab. It's awesome, by the way. And this woman, Stretch Man, I go, she's unbelievable at it. And I go, what do you do? She says, I'm a stunt woman. I go, what else? She goes, I was a triathlete. I'm like, okay. And she describes a workout. She could be special forces. Mm-hmm. I'm like, unless he goes, that was always my goal. I didn't think it was an option. That would be someone that Pete would say, great, you can hit all the fitness goals. That's the point.
That's the
it's
point.
Not anti-woman. It's nothing. Remember Trump named his secretary of HUD, his HUD secretary is black.
Yes.
He doesn't say he's black. He's the best person for the job. He doesn't say his Treasury Secretary is gay.
Yeah.
He's the best person for the job. He doesn't say Rick Grinnell is my key aide. He's gay. It doesn't matter. That's what Pete was saying in his own way.
Well, I think that it was just interesting to see the complete backlash to it, and I think that frankly the administration leaned into it smartly because it was the kind of thing that, if you care about this stuff, and for those of us who have family in the military, as I do on both sides of the family, it's something that they care about. And I know that this was, I think, a message received in a very positive way.
What did you think?
I thought, frankly, that this is just about, we all want everybody to be on the same page here. Things are going to be different now. Sending a message that the next, 3 years plus, this is going to be
Meritocracy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's a very important message to send, particularly given the different natures of the challenges that we see around the world. And so I actually did want to talk to you about what you see going on, particularly as it relates to Venezuela right now. What do you think the attitude of the administration really is? Because we've seen the bits and pieces come out.
Well, I remember with John Bolton and Marco Rubio working pretty close together when they were briefly there, and they say the problem in South America, we cannot allow Maduro to continue to subvert the system. His communist tendencies, his mentor was Chavez. We know what Cuba is and will always be, it seems, sadly. But if you look at the fact that Russia, China, and Iran have a home in Venezuela, if you look at the fact that we had a deal with them, Biden cut it, and it was a ridiculous one. You pump your oil, have a free and fair election, and let's cut it a deal. Because we have oil, but he doesn't want to do that to his green base. Yeah. So he's going to Venezuela dirty oil. So he loses an election, gets 30% of the vote, and he stays. So I think Rubio was saying that we got the Sinaloa cartel guys that said, I'll tell you exactly what's going on. Venezuela is using TDA as well as what they know about narcotics to try to flood our system with illegal drugs, make a ton of money, and send them back. And this is part of it. They have an informant that's doing it. And I'm surprised, I'm happy that Trump didn't go, hey, I got an informant in prison. But I think that's what's happening. And I know we're not in the overthrow business. It never goes smooth. But I was struck by the New York Times story today that said Rubio's really pushing for it. He's a rational guy in particular. So we'll see what happens.
I think that it's interesting how much the refusal of the media Democrat complex to shift in the wake of the most recent election on so many of these major points. I thought that they would have a re-examination, that they would go through a period of saying, maybe we were too far out on the edge when it came to the trans issues. Maybe we shouldn't have ignored an open border for as long as we did. Maybe we should have cared about these things, or at least communicated about them to the American people, something that was a little bit closer to the center of our politics. I don't see any of that happening right now. Instead, I see them trying to find, scenarios that they can use just to sort of inflame their base on some of this stuff.
Like ICE.
Especially on the ICE front. And to see Gavin Newsom go out, even in the wake of something like the terrible, assassination, the murder of Charlie Kirk, and continue with this type of rhetoric, continue with this kind of thing that can only increase and inflame. Are you surprised by that? Are you surprised that there hasn't been any hesitancy on their part to consider?
I am, but it also shows there's really nobody who they're following. They're just like a hydra, where Chicago goes, Pritzker goes, I want to be president. So I saw Newsom getting a few points, so I'm going to say the most outrageous thing. But doubling and tripling down and saying ICE is the problem, let's organize against it, and Newsom saying it's the same thing, but never acknowledging the border. I always look at, from the left, as Bill Maher should be the weather vane.
Yeah.
Bill Maher's like, I'm a liberal, I have huge problems with Trump.
Yep.
But I got a huge problem with men and women's sports, and I got a huge problem with the fact that we left the border wide open. Should we admit that's pretty stupid?
Yeah.
And could we just say that, there's a lot of legal immigrant criminals that need to be hunted down?
I follow he's a kind of Bernie bro socialist who I think is actually fairly smart on their side. And he said every story that comes out about California seems to be either here's another terrible failure of policy, or can Gavin Newsom lead the new Democratic Party by coming up and swearing more? That's basically what it is.
Ben, you know what it is too, though? He's not taking aim at the Republican Party. He's just shooting for Trump.
Yeah.
And that's fine if Trump was going to run again.
Yeah.
But he's not running again.
No.
So he's going to find himself punching at the air at some point, because J.D. Vance and, who knows, Rubio and DeSantis go,
It also seems very performative to me in the sense that
it's not natural.
It's so unnatural from who he used to be and how he used to talk. He used to talk about watching Fox all the time and things like that. His very first podcast interview was with Charlie, and it's where he said something that I'm sure he's going to eventually have to walk back about the trans policies being deeply unfair. And I feel like he's doing it because he's worried, as a lot of Democrats are, as Chuck Schumer is with this shutdown, that AOC and Zoran Mandani are the future of their party. What do you think about that?
I think he's worried about himself.
Okay.
I think he wants to separate himself, and he's got a problem. He doesn't have a successful, he hasn't been a successful governor. You could say that Larry Hogan was a successful governor, even though he's a moderate and some Republicans would never accept him. You absolutely could say that Governor DeSantis is a successful governor, and Governor Beshear, I can't name one policy, but he's got a 60% approval rating. Usually you fail up, so you go, okay, these guys, they're doing really well at this level, they could probably run a state. I don't know anybody who thinks he's been a good governor. No. I mean, 42, 43%. Yeah. So, and still to this day, he has still got gas prices at $6. He's going after GM for continuing to sell gas-powered cars when he knows the American public, their sales are off 8% and there's no more subsidies. So he's anti-business. He's angry at people that are leaving. His state is still not rebuilt. Yeah, so I don't get it.
I don't know if you've seen those Adam Carolla videos where he goes down and he checks in on where the fires were, and every month he just sort of posts an update, and it's like still nothing. Still nothing, just graffiti, no rebuilding.
And this is nice. This is Altadena.
This is the most valuable property that you can buy. It's shocking to me. I feel like this shutdown is very stupid. It doesn't make any political sense to me why they're doing it. I've listened to Chuck Schumer. I've listened to Hakeem Jeffries. I don't see how they come out of this and don't look, like they are, from their own basis perspective, like they caved and got basically nothing. And they seem to be empowering Russ Vought and President Trump to do a lot of changes internally that could potentially have lasting power. I just feel like this Democratic Party is really lost at this moment. And maybe I'm wrong, but at this moment, I feel like this midterm could be something that bucks historical trends.
A couple of things. I worry about, even when Elon Musk was doing, just firing people. Because you live in Washington.
Oh, yeah.
These are people.
Oh, yeah, and everybody knows somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I have about half a dozen texts this morning saying, oh, well, I guess I did get furloughed, that kind of thing.
Well, I even when Doge was coming through and just saying I'm cutting 20%, I also think about a lot of people took pride in their job. Like, how do you even know them?
Yeah.
How are you that sure so quickly that you have? So I had a little problem with that. If I'm a Republican, I'm worried about Russ Vought coming in there and saying, gone. You lost your job permanently. Where the Republican base might be like, good, we're getting our house in order. Other people are like, what did I do?
Yeah.
I was making $65,000 a year. I'm in my 17th year.
Yeah.
If Russ Vought decided to get rid of it, I'm not too sure you don't come off very callous, and then you lose.
And we've seen that matter,
hand.
Obviously, in the past in Virginia elections, and obviously the gubernatorial is.
It's not going to help. Yeah. It's not going to help the lieutenant governor win.
Yeah.
Right?
So, but on the flip side of that, do you think that this is going to be a situation where Democrats come out with a win, or something that invigorates them, or something like that? Because I don't see the path to it.
What Chad Pergram told me yesterday is that they're just lining up the number one issue for the midterms to be health care. Republicans are trying to cut it. So if they go down swinging, going to bat for subsidies that would have kept premiums down, and I believe everyone finds out about their next year's premium shortly, and it goes up, and they're going to say, but this is why we were fighting.
Yeah.
So I think they got to find an off-ramp in the real world. Maybe they don't. Maybe they can't find one. Maybe they find an off-ramp, and they get there 3 or 4 weeks to work out the appropriations bill.
Well, shutdowns over healthcare have always worked out for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
So let's wrap things up with this, Brian. At your assessment of this Trump presidency at the 8-month point, he's done so many things. He's moved so quickly in so many different areas. Where do you think he's done the best, and where do you think, either a surprise or something like that, and where do you think even he would have to say, honestly, this has not gone the way that I hoped it would?
Well, number one, I don't love our relations with India. They should have a hedge against China. They should never be appearing walking in Beijing like that. And that's an unforced error. But I do understand why he put the tariffs on them. But he was just a miscommunication between the Pakistan-India situation. So I think he should fix that. That I just land more trade deals, and that will help bring prices down. I feel bad because I had a chance to talk to Senator Thune and Joni Ernst. The farmers are not happy because they had an unbelievable crop, especially soybeans, and China is not buying them, and yet they're paying more for other countries to buy them. They've had a series of talks with China, and they got rare earth back, and what about the farmers? But I'm really enthused by the team how they're working, how they're functioning, how they like each other. There's no this mass firing anymore.
It does. I mean, the thing that is really it's a polar opposite in terms of the way that the team in the first term, which obviously had to deal with the harassment of Russiagate and everything related to that, but this team really does seem to be very solid by comparison in terms of just getting along together, in terms of being able to work together, and that. I mean, it's a real marked difference, and so I certainly see that in Washington. Do you see at this point a clear favorite? You mentioned the idea of Vance, Rubio, DeSantis, maybe. Do you see a clear favorite between them, and do you think that that's a situation that is fluid, basically, that could change dramatically?
Your contacts are as good as mine in there, but when I talk to people, it looks like JD. I mean, everybody says JD is the heir apparent.
Yeah.
So even though he puts his 28 hats on and talks about how good Marco Rubio is going to do, and Rubio also doesn't have a side of him, a knife in the back side of him. I know that Jeb Bush feels differently when they ran against him, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't think Rubio needs to be president. I don't think that he feels that way, but I think that they know he's got to be around, so I don't look at him as a threat. The thing that worries me about JD, he does have a isolationist foreign policy. My hope is when he got a chance to see it all inside out, he would change a little. And so far, I don't think he's really changed. But, like, for example, you could be Russia's gotten we should give Russia a fresh look. They've gotten a raw deal. Really? Still? Like, after you saw the president take that. So that's my hope.
Yeah.
But, man, the talent. I watched JD the other day and handled 4 or 5 interviews in a row, and then Kamala Harris has got a book tour. And she can't even be smooth explaining her own life, let alone the policy.
Yeah.
And do you realize if J.D. Vance or a talent level of J.D. Vance was with Joe Biden, do you realize that could have saved the Biden administration?
Yeah.
Could have been the heir apparent. It would have been very tough for Trump to win it back.
At a certain point, it does just depend on raw, natural talent. And
Yeah.
it's
just know the stuff.
Yeah, just
know
know
the
the
issue.
stuff, develop it. And I think that, there are a lot of people who feel that way about JD. I share your concerns about his foreign policy, but I'm hopeful that, just as you said, that he can take a more, perhaps shape it a little bit more by the experience, let's say.
Do you think anybody else? I think DeSantis will definitely run.
I think that there will be someone else who runs. I would actually expect that it's going to be Glenn Youngkin, but I think that that's going to be not
that'll be the most civil
it'll be
primary
very civil,
ever.
Very civil.
Right.
But there's always somebody who surprises. There's always somebody who comes out of nowhere. So
right.
it's going to be
the Pat Buchanan of the race.
Exactly, and it'll be an interesting thing to watch. Brian Kilmeade, thank you so much for taking the time to join.
Congratulations on your podcast, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you. So in a development that's important to all of the fans of Harry Potter this week, you saw a rift open up more publicly between Emma Watson and J.K. Rowling, with Watson coming out and saying essentially that she was walking back some of the statements that she had signed on to in the past regarding her views on Rowling's criticism of the trans agenda and things like that. Obviously, this is a situation where you would expect this type of thing to be asked of someone whose prominence is related to someone who's become such a divisive figure, particularly on the left. But Rowling surprisingly fired back in a lengthy post that she put on X. I won't read you the whole thing, but she said in part, "I'm not owed eternal agreement from any actor who once played a character I created. The idea is as ludicrous as me checking with the boss I had when I was 21 for opinions I should hold these days. Emma Watson and her co-stars have every right to embrace gender identity ideology. Such beliefs are legally protected, and I wouldn't want to see any of them threatened with loss of work or violence or death because of them. However, Emma and Dan in particular," that's Radcliffe, of course, "have both made it clear over the last few years that they think our former professional association gives them a particular right, nay obligation, to critique me and my views in public. Years after they finished acting in Potter, they continue to assume the role of de facto spokespeople for the world I created." It's interesting how these alliances have played out in the world of pop culture, where you have different people who assign themselves in, political positions based on where they see the trends going. And I think that what's actually happening here is that Watson is recognizing that the trend has shifted. In the time since she signed on to these pro-trans allyship type statements against J.K. Rowling on this issue, things have really changed. Eyes have been opened. You've seen clinics close. You've seen look backs at the kind of treatment that was being given to young children in particular as being something monstrous as opposed to something necessary. And for Rowling to have this type of attitude, I think, is just a sign of her maturity and understanding that you aren't just going to you're not just going to erase everything that you said about me in the past. I'm going to remember it. I think that this is an example where Emma Watson picked a side because she thought it was going to be the way of the future, as so many people did when they saw the march of extreme leftism within the trans agenda. But I think now, going forward, women are reasserting themselves in a way that's truly powerful. It's political, obviously, but it's also an important cultural issue. And I think that more and more we are going to see that shift continue. Rowling is on the right side of history on this one, even if Emma thought she was on the right side at the time. You've been listening to another edition of The Big Ben Show. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Thank you for your comments, and I hope that you'll weigh in on some of our conversations today with Congresswoman Nancy Mace, and of course, your thoughts on any of the Harry Potter-related mishigas that's gone on in public. You can follow me on X at bdomenech, and we'll be back next week with more to dive back into the fray.